Hi, everybody. Joe Cioffi here. Weather in 5 days in 5 minutes. And we are going to be looking tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, the gusty winds that have been occurring across parts of the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states. New winter storm watches that are going up in parts of the plains as the next storm system gets ready. And of course, as we've been saying, the never ending winter storm warnings up in Northern California, including the coastal range of California into Southern Oregon. All that and more on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Both Weather and 5 and the Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island. And they're getting ready for spring, which means if you need mulch, topsoil, sand, they've got it there in a big way. And if there is still the chance that there could be another winter storm down the road, might need some salt. 631-756-1125 is the phone number for the best prices anywhere. The website is omnitruevalue.com. The big story today, weather-wise, in the Northeast anyway, particularly from southern New England down through New Jersey and in inland areas as well, has been the wind. It has been on the gusty side, mainly 25 to 35 miles per hour, but we've had even occasional gusts up to 50 miles an hour. That was the last observation that we saw from Atlantic City. It was at 48, now down to 33, 37 mile an hour wind gusts right at, I believe that is the Gabreski Airport, West Hampton Beach on Long Island. We've been seeing some gusts up into the 40s in inland spots like at Caldwell, for example, with a gust to 44. So the wind has been very busy, and that is really going to be the story for the next couple of days in this area because of the storm that is offshore and strong high pressure to the north. The pressure gradient is fairly tight. Not a whole lot going on across the U.S., more the exceptions rather than the rule, but we do have new winter storm watches that are up for southern Minnesota and northern Iowa into southwestern Wisconsin. Also for parts of western South Dakota and a few counties in Montana and Wyoming. Advisories surrounding that. Already a couple of winter storm warnings up in north central parts of South Dakota. Meanwhile, here we go in California. We have winter storm warnings in the Sierra Nevadas, the coastal range of California into Oregon. We also now have flood watches up for parts of central and even starting to nose into southern California with the next round of precipitation and the next storm system that's coming into the west. So checking out the satellite view, if you look south of Nova Scotia, south and east of Nova Scotia, you'll see a very broad rotation there. There is a storm that is out there. Last night's system that moved on through in parts of northeastern Pennsylvania and parts of New Jersey and Long Island is now well to the east. You see the lightning flashes offshore with thunderstorms, so that's actually re-energizing this storm that's offshore. Meanwhile, higher pressures are building southward from Canada, which has helped to improve the sky conditions from southern New England and points south. It's been a beautiful day in the southeast, and you start to see the clouds and the moisture coming in to the plains where the next storm is organizing, and there's a rotation off the Pacific Northwest off the coast of Oregon, which is dropping southward, and that's the next California system. Radars are actually showing some patches of light snow in parts of Maine and New Hampshire and also into upstate New York, and they're moving southward. That's all around that coastal low. Otherwise, as you go further south, it's nice and quiet all the way down to Florida. Some rain developing now in eastern New Mexico and northeastward into Oklahoma and Kansas. We've got snow further north, and here comes the next surge of moisture into Northern California with the next storm system. So just going to take a look at WPC and see what they're doing here. This is going to be the probability of at least 2 inches. This covers us through Friday evening. So there's not really much going on in the Northeast. You do see a rather large area that blossoms out in the plains and over the Great Lakes, 80 to 100% probability in South Dakota, North Dakota into Minnesota and Wisconsin and northern Iowa. That's also extending east into the lower peninsula of Michigan. And then out in the west, we have high probabilities for at least 2 in Idaho, back into Oregon, the Cascades, and down into the Sierra Nevadas, and again, those coastal ranges in California in play as well. The long range from WPC, I think this is worth taking a look at because we do have our next system coming for Friday night and Saturday. So as far as Friday into Saturday is concerned, WPC has, and this is the probability of at least a few inches into northern New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, mainly north and west of Philadelphia and New York City, extending into southwestern parts of Connecticut and going north and west of there. Higher probabilities, again, this is through Friday evening, for Michigan, about east into northern Ohio, Pennsylvania, and southwestern New York. Saturday into Sunday, they have some leftover 10 to 30% probabilities for northern New Jersey, all of Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, much of all of the Hudson Valley, back to the Catskills into northeast PA, southern half of Vermont and New Hampshire, and on up into Maine. So let's move with the weather models here. Latest GFS, I think, matches up pretty well with the European. A lot of isobars here in the east. And that's because of that storm that's offshore, that's way out here, and we've got a big high that's not even on the map. It's actually in north central Canada, and pressing down. So you have a lot of higher pressure that's building down all the way into the southeastern part of the United States. And with that big low out of the east, the pressure gradient in the east is tight and is going to remain tight through tonight, through tomorrow night, and then on Thursday it starts to ease just a little bit. Now we've got the next storm system that is centered there in central Missouri, snow in Iowa, southern Minnesota on Thursday, spreading over into the Great Lakes with a low in Illinois that goes through central Indiana, makes its way into southwestern Pennsylvania, and here's where we start to see the usual redevelopment. The primary low, this has been the signature the last couple of weeks. Primary lows to our west, secondary lows that develop just offshore, and that's how we're going to see it play out for Friday night into Saturday morning. And then that storm system will probably intensify some. How much cold air are we going to have? Well, there's going to be some just to our north and west, so if the storm deepens enough, it could pull some of that cold air down into Saturday morning, and I think inland areas probably stand a pretty good chance of seeing some accumulating snow. Whether it makes it down to the coast or not remains to be seen. So this is part of the many pieces of the puzzle that we're going to have to try to piece together over the next couple of days. The blocking signature is going to hold for a while. So after this low pulls out, we're probably going to have another system that's going to try to develop. Now the GFS doesn't have much here for early next week. The other models seem to want to try to develop a second storm along about Tuesday. I'm not sure yet whether that's correct or not. This model has a much weaker profile here, and it eventually does get around to doing yet another system around St. Patrick's Day in the long, long range. I don't know. Again, the specifics for next week, not something I would hang my hat on now because it's just way too early in the game. But it does seem like we're in a bit of an active pattern here and a busy pattern going forward. Weather in 5 brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. 631-756-1125 is the phone number. The website, omnitruevalue.com. And we're going to cover all of this tonight and go over it in great detail on the Joe and Joe Weather Show at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you then.